This morning we're picking back up with Mark 21 through 43. I think many of you will recognize this story. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come, put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I'll just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that the power had gone out of him, and he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowded against you," his disciples answered. "And yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, John, and the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all the commotion and wailing? This child's not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. And after he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and disciples who were with him, and they went in there the child was. He took her by the hand and said, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to tell anyone know about this, and told them to give her something to eat. I have to tell you where my week started out this week. I had agreed last minute to host the Together Church Pastors Retreat here on Monday, which meant I had to stop at King Soopers on the way in to get some coffee for the Keurig machine. First of all, I get up there and I look at the coffee and I look at $12 for a box of 10. I'm like, I got annoyed. It's like, that's crazy. So then I found some on sale and I went to the self-checkout machine. And at self-checkout machine, I'm standing there and I have to let you know that self-checkout machines, I think they were created for the purpose as a weighing my spiritual wellness. So here I am, I'm checking these things out, and sure enough that the sale price doesn't go, it doesn't come up. So I look around, I see the guy and the woman, they're talking to each other, and I'm getting impatient. And so finally I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? And I ran back to the aisle to make sure I got the sale price right. I did, I came back, they're still not seeing me. And so I mean, after 30 seconds, I just switched over to the other self-checkout machine. I'm like, I'll just see if it'll ring up on that machine. And sure enough, it rings up. And then finally, the lady comes over, and I just said, well, that one, I don't know what that one's doing. This one worked. And then I was just frustrated and got my stuff and walked out of there. I get into the car, and I go to push my car on, and it won't start. It says, not connecting with your car fob. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So I open that thing up. Jimmy, it's still at one at work. We're outside of King Soopers. I can go in and get a battery. I run back inside, get the battery, and here I am standing before the self-checkout machine again. And sure enough, I did something in the wrong way where that said, see the attendant. And the light starts flashing, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, Jesus. And sure enough, she was right there. She saw me. She's like, I am not letting this guy leave here again. So she helped me out, and I said, these things about kill me. And she goes, oh, tell me about it. We live in a world that's not fully redeemed. We live in a world where there are still self-checkout lines in that. And I do believe there will be a day when there will be no more self-checkout lines in this world. But the question is, if we live in this world that's not fully redeemed, that is full of things much worse than self-checkout lines, how do we as apprentices of Jesus live in this world? Where we struggle, where there's suffering, where there's injustice, where we wait for God to act and make things right. Maybe how do we live in a world that often is beyond our control? Hartmut Rosa is a German sociologist, and he writes this book with this wonderful title, The Uncontrollability of the World. People don't like that. It's not going to get picked up by a lot of people because nobody wants to know about the uncontrollability of the world. Everybody wants to know, how do we control the world? And we spend so much time and energy in our lives trying to control and manage the things around us. And we get easily frustrated when we realize we can't control the world as much as we'd like to. There are things within our control, there's no doubt about that. But there are things that are beyond us. Jairus, the synagogue leader, his daughter's gotten sick, and she's getting to the point where she's about to die. He can't control that. He's heard of this Jesus. He's heard that this guy is a healer, but he also knows that his other leaders find him to be a blasphemer, a heretic, and they're plotting to kill him. But that doesn't matter. He doesn't worry about that because he's in that state of desperation. You've been there, haven't you? Where nothing else matters. I need to get my loved one well, and I will do whatever it takes. I will go to this guy. I will ask him for help. I will ask him and plead with him. He falls down before Jesus on his knees. This is the synagogue leader. This is the man in charge of the local synagogue. This is a man of clout. He probably has wealth. He probably has a lot of respect of everyone around. And he is on his knees before Jesus, risking it all for the healing of his daughter. To me, that's a powerful scene. He knows he's past the point of control. And so he'll go to Jesus. And Jesus goes with him. And of course Jesus goes with him. What's Jesus' mission? Who has he come for? He's come for the sick. Do you remember that? He hasn't come for those who are well. He comes for the sick. So he goes. But on the way, there's a crowd following him that's gathering around him. The crowd are these people who want what Jesus is selling. They want the goods and services. They want the miracles. They want what's trending. Jesus has become viral. He's the latest thing to hit the market, and they want it. And they're following Jesus. And in the midst of that, there's this woman who for 12 years has been hemorrhaging. Can you begin to imagine that? Hemorrhaging, bleeding. What that means in her day and age is that she's unclean. She's not fit to be part of the community. She's not fit to come into the synagogue. She's not clean. She can't be in public. She can't be with her family. She is completely isolated. She's on the margins. She's living all by herself. And she's spent all of her money trying to make herself better, and it's only made her worse. Talk about not having control. For 12 years, she has suffered. And so she thinks, if I just touch the hem of this guy's clothes, that's kind of a common thought back then. If there's somebody who's a leader and who's famous, that if you were to get near them or touch them, that would bring you healing or blessing or something. And so she goes and she takes the risk and she says, I'm going to touch. And within a moment, the bleeding stops. She even has a sense that she's freed from her suffering. Jesus, he's aware of this. He's aware of wait a second, some of the power has gone out of me. And he wants to stop and look around for her. And the disciples are like, dude, look at the crowd around you. How do you know who touched you? But Jesus persists. He wants to see her. He wants to know this woman. He wants to connect with her. He wants to encounter her. And she hears all this and she sees it. So she comes and she falls at Jesus' feet. This is the third time. Second time in our story. Do you remember last week, the man who's been possessed by evil, he comes and he falls at Jesus' feet? So it's an act of worship. It's an act of honor. And she's afraid and she's trembling. And Jesus' words to her, daughter, daughter. He calls her a daughter. I mean, that's just this beautiful moment. He says, your faith has made you well. Get up. And you're free from suffering. We love that part. For 12 years, and now she has this moment. She's freed from her suffering and her struggle. She's allowed to go back to community. She can go worship again in the temple, in the synagogue. She can be with her family again. Afterwards, people from Jairus' camp come in. They're like, Jairus, sorry, man, your daughter's dead. Can you imagine? Here's Jairus waiting for Jesus this whole time. He's waiting for this man who he knows can heal his daughter, and he's taken a diversion, and he's waiting. And in the meantime, his daughter dies. But what does Jesus say to him? Jesus says, don't fear, only believe. Just believe. Have you ever been struggling with something where you're just falling apart, where you feel like your life is unhinged? And someone says to you, don't fear, just believe. Like, I wouldn't have been good for that clerk if she would have come up to me and said, hey, just believe. I mean, you've had people say that to you before, right? When you're struggling or grieving or struggling with something hard in life. It's not what you want to hear. But Jesus says it to Jairus. Jesus also knows who Jesus is. So he tells the crowd, he says, you can't come with me. He takes 3 of the disciples and they go to this town. And there's wailing and commotion. I learned this week that when someone's grieving, they would actually pay for grievers, like professional wailers, to come. There'd be like 3 of them, and they would come and they would sing these songs and they would wail out in front of your house, and that's what you did. That was their way of public grieving. So most likely Jesus encountered these folks, and he basically has them leave, and he says, "Listen, no, why are you all this commotion? She's not dead. She's asleep." This is the only passage. This is the only story, the account of the story that says this. So it's a weird question, like, is she asleep or is she dead? And they just laugh at him because they're the realists of the world, right? I mean, if someone tells you something impossible, you're going to laugh at them, right? You're going to, whatever. But that's what they're doing. So you have the realists in this picture as well. And Jesus goes in and he sees a little girl and he says to her, "Little girl, get up." And she gets up. Tim Keller has a great way of saying this. I'll probably have to look at it. He phrases it this way: when I'm holding your hand, you no longer have to fear. You no longer have to fear. It's as if you are now alive. And so Jesus raises her from the dead. Spectacular. People are astonished. One of the things about these passages is what we've been seeing is that Jesus has the power to calm a storm, to tell it to just be still. Jesus has the power to take evil out of somebody who's totally distorted the person. And now Jesus has the ability to be touched and a woman's healed. And now Jesus has the ability to raise a girl from her dead. Well, this is what it looks like when the God of heaven and the life of heaven is invading the present. And Jesus embodies that presence and that power. These things will happen because this is what God intends for the world, to make things right, to put those who are sick and make them well, to make those who are blind and give them sight, for those who are outcast to bring them into the center, to restore them into community. This is God's heart. And we see this in this passage and we're amazed by it. And there's truth to that God is a God mighty to save, who can rescue us and move mountains. There's no doubt about that. We like it because it shows God to be a superhero God. Have you ever heard that phrase? I know I've talked about it here before. That we envision God as a superhero. A God who's going to kind of fly in and save us from rescue and danger. A God who is going to bring everything that's out of control into control. That's the God that we like. And God acts that way sometimes. There's no doubt about it. We want a world of controllability. We want a world where when we've been waiting for 12 years, when our children are dying, we want God to act and we want God to move. I deeply appreciate this passage because what it does is it holds us in tension. Israel has been waiting for God to come and restore them and to bring shalom and peace. This woman is a representation of that. There's no strange thing that he says daughter to both of these women. Because Israel oftentimes is referred to as daughter of Zion. So God is moving amongst them when these are all signs that God is coming as God said God would come. But yet it's also points out and holds the other side of the tension that we live in a world that's not yet fully invaded by heaven, not yet fully redeemed. And I think it's a good passage for us because we know that world well. We live in a world where things aren't healed, where we're still 6 years into 12 years of suffering. We know the world where our children aren't raised from the dead. We know that our sickness is still with us and persisting after us. We know our health is declining and our loved ones are fading. We know the world feels out of control. And so the question is, how do we hold these two things in tension? A God who in power and might can come and act, and yet we're still waiting. We're still wondering, God, do you see me? Do you hear me in my plight? And I think this passage holds this all very well together. I remember living in my neighborhood in Denver. And there would be people come and they'd buy homes and they'd flip homes. And then when they were all done, all of a sudden their yard was landscaped and it was beautiful. And they had all these beautiful walls and trees and it was gorgeous. And then there was the rest of us whose yard, looked a little better maybe at the end of the spring or in the summer. And there was this progression. And I think God acts in both ways. Sometimes God comes over and takes the garden over and it's brand new and it looks wonderful. And then there's the rest of us where it's a slow progression of God working in our lives, forming us and shaping us and transforming us and healing us bit by bit so our garden becomes to look a little bit nicer maybe, a little bit more tenable. And then there's just some of us whose yards will never, ever look like that, right? It's true. But I think that's how God works. That's how I experience God working. Yes, sometimes he comes, I can touch people can touch his hem and they're healed. And there are some people who've been praying for a long time, waiting. So how do we do with this? How do we apprentice Jesus and live in this world? A world often beyond our control, a world where we struggle, suffer, and experience great tragedy and loss. So, I think we turn quickly to the ancients. Do you remember Isaiah the prophet? Isaiah the prophet is speaking to Israel, who's been in exile, who's been abandoned by God, who has lost everything, family, home, temple, access to all that they know. They've been invaded. They've seen terrible things. And the prophet Isaiah speaks these words. Why do you, Jacob, and you assert Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and the justice due me escapes the notice of my God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord or the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives strength to the weary, and to the one who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. Before I go on to Psalm 62, this is to a people who are tired and weary and wondering, God, where are you? They've been suffering and struggling. And the word is, wait. Psalm 62 picks it up. My soul waits in silence for God alone. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation. My stronghold, I will not be greatly shaken. 5:7. My soul waits in silence for God alone. For my hope is from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. My refuge, I will not be shaken. My salvation and my glory rest on God, the rock of my strength. My refuge is in God. Verse 11, God has spoken once, twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God. You see the tension there too. This is people in deep struggle. They know what it means to be human and how hard and difficult it can be, and yet they hold on to this faith. These two are merged together. And so Jesus is inviting us to see that simultaneously, because here's the other story of it, is that Jesus heals these two people, but there are people probably in the European continent that Jesus is not healing. Jesus isn't healing everyone. Jesus is showing and demonstrating the inbreaking power of God in the midst. So witness that they would see the character and the love and the mightiness of who God is. So that in struggle and suffering, they will continue to remember that our life isn't in how well we can control things. Our life is in God who's with us in the struggle and in the suffering as well. And they hold those two things well together. When I was a teenager, I remember reading the book Joni, about Joni Eareckson Tada. And I remember it because it stood out to me. Here's this woman who was diving into a lake, a body of water, hits her head. She's paralyzed from the legs down. I don't even think she could use her arms. And one of the things, I was an artist at the time, and so I was amazed by the fact that she could take a pencil in her mouth and draw these beautiful pictures. But I was also somebody who engaged the world with my physicality. For me, that's how I understood the world. That's where I succeeded. I was okay in classrooms, but not really. What I wanted to do was go outside and play. I wanted to get a ball in my hands and be physical. That's how I engaged the world around me. And I just remember being a teenager, what if that was taken from me? What if that was taken from me? I couldn't even imagine it, because that's my main way of engaging the world. So what I love about Joni Eareckson Tada, is I've heard her over the years, is that at first it was hard, and she struggled with the pain, and she prayed and prayed and prayed, and yet she remained paralyzed. I mean, I imagine lots of people said to her, Joni, if you just weren't afraid and you just believed. But what's amazing is she believed, and she continued to seek after God. And she continued to say, God is my refuge, and I'm going to wait upon God. And what happens is she now can tell the story that this accident and this tragedy became a doorway for her to grow more intimately and more passionate in life with God. And God used that life to speak hope and peace and joy to so many other people. She would go on to say that the weaker I am, the more I lean on God, and the more I discover how strong God is. I think apprentices, we live in this tension of the now that's not fully redeemed, and the not yet. That day when all self-checkout machines have been destroyed. All evil and pain and suffering, tyrants and wars are gone. And there's only peace, and there's only glory, and there's only the presence of God. But Jesus is saying you can begin to take hold of that life now, and you can live that life. You will find comfort and peace and strength. You will find renewing and refreshment in the journey. For I am your God. And I will not forsake you, and I will not leave you. You belong to me. You're my beloved, and I delight in you. and all I want is your good. Amen.